Hi, it's Ian from the Postal Hub podcast.
And Marek from Last Mile Experts.
And we are the Last Mile Prophets. This is the last word on the last mile. This video is created thanks to Modern Expo, one of the key players in the world's parcel locker market. Modern Expo's product portfolio includes innovative solutions with refrigeration and freezing cells, Bluetooth locks, and even personal parcel lockers. Marek, not that long ago we recorded a video having a look at Australia Post's parcel lockers. There's a pop-out up there somewhere. And one of the things that was noticeable in that video, Marek, was that the Australia Post has got different styles of parcel lockers out there. It's probably a good time for us to talk about what's sort of happening generally in the parcel locker space. So how would you characterize the different sort of types of parcel lockers that are out there?
Actually, I'm really pleased that you chose this topic today, Ian, because as you know, it's one of my faves. I could talk about lockers all day. So basically, if we're to choose types, I'd say first is indoor, outdoor. Historically, most of them were indoor. And if you like, we could talk about why that's not so great. So indoor, outdoor. Then next gen, and let's call them classic lockers. That's to coin a phrase from my friends at Kiba. So the classic is the one that needs power and looks like a locker should look, with a screen in inverted commas.
Yeah.
And then the next gen is the battery powered one, which basically doesn't have a screen, doesn't require power cables, doesn't even require Wi-Fi. So I'd say probably that's the generic, with one exception. I'm talking about out-of-home lockers now, because we don't talk about the ones, the one parcel, two parcel locker you put outside of your home.
Yeah, that's probably a whole other discussion about that, about the residential parcel locker, which is for a single residence. However, Marek, when you talk about indoor and outdoor parcel lockers, you could probably say, well, the parcel lockers that can be installed in the foyer, or the foyer if you're that kind of person, the lobby of an apartment block are basically your indoor lockers, aren't they? But that wasn't always the thinking, was it? I mean, the indoor lockers, well, you said there's a problem with them. Well, it's obvious, isn't it, Marek, what the problem is?
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, the reason why they call them indoor or foyer locker, that sounds really quite good, is a foyer locker. Are you a foyer locker or an outdoor locker? So sorry, I got carried away here. The foyer locker will typically not be metal, so you can't use it outside. It's cheaper to produce.
Well, they're made out of wood or something, are they?
Actually, they are. They were made.
Well, there are actually, aren't there? Some of them are made out of wood, aren't they? Yeah.
Some kind of MDF wood type mix, and they're pretty good, and they're okay provided they're used inside. The reason why I say they're not so good is they're not so universal, and in many cases, an indoor locker will require access. Access is not as easy, and we all know that what we love most is a locker that's very easy to get to 24/7. Maybe in a Lidl car park close to you, easily
to pick a random supermarket that seems to always be partnering with parcel locker networks. But anyway,
honestly, I picked Lidl because they do it very, very well, because their model fits extremely well to lockers. They have
what's special about Lidl for those who are outside of Europe or might have never seen a Lidl? What's special about Lidl then that makes their setup particularly amenable, if that's the right word, or suitable for parcel lockers?
Oh, this is so French today. So what's particular from what I can see, and I'm trying to think if I've ever seen a different one, all of them have a car park close by. Even if you don't have the classic model, which is basically car park on ground level next to the store, easily accessible 24/7. Even if you don't have that, there'll be a car park nearby. So underground car park or other form of easy access to the store and therefore to the locker. So that's what makes them really good. And probably, to be fair, so that all the other supermarkets out there don't say that last mile profits are favouring only Lidl. If someone else has that sort of site, let us know, by the way, because there are going to be a lot of parcel locker operators who would love to know you.
When it comes to Lidl, yes, every Lidl I think I've ever been to it's basically freestanding as opposed to being inside, say, a shopping centre or something like that. And you can often find the supermarkets that are inside a shopping centre. Well, let's talk about this access part of it, though. So when you talk about access to the lockers, it's not just about the public being able to access them easily and retrieve their lockers. It's also about the delivery driver being able to access them easily, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's equally important because, we discussed before about an InPost delivery driver being able to do well in excess of 1,000 parcels in a day. And it's because the B2C stop becomes like a B2B stop. So it's in the same place, easy to park, easy to access the locker. He can literally park next to it, bang, 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 parcels in. In fact, a little hot piece of news from the latest report I saw from InPost InPost, it's about 75 parcels per stop for a locker.
Really?
Which
That's
is
not
really
bad.
not bad at all. And again, we can talk later about classic and modern lockers. Most of the modern lockers, the next gen lockers, the battery powered ones, are much smaller. So theoretically, you're not going to be able to do the 75 parcels per stop, at least based on the installations they have at present.
I think this is a very interesting point about the driver being able to access easily, because I've seen lockers inside, say, a shopping centre or a food court. The driver has to find a parking spot somewhere. Now, it's not always guaranteed that there'll be a car park, as in a shopping centre car park nearby, because it might be in a city area. They then have to travel with, have you seen them, Marek, these expandable trolleys? They
Yes.
fold up and they expand it like a canvas bag inside. They have to chuck the parcels in there and then get them out when they get there, instead of being able to do it in a more efficient way. Sometimes, Marek, if you're desperate for sites and you've got a good site that will enable trip chaining, well, then it's worth it, isn't it?
You make a good point, though. First of all, not everyone has the expandable cart, and it really is a pain. And actually, if it's a pain for the courier, it's also a pain for many customers, because I don't know about you, but if I have a choice of my nearest locker, 350 meters away, slipper distance, thank you, InPost, and outside with a car park, it's much easier. I would never, ever go for one in a shopping centre, because what if it's not a trip chain? What if I have to go specially to pick it up?
And this is where, I know we're getting a little bit off topic here, but this is where I think the customers really need to have choice and information when they get to checkout. One of the things that you'd also have to say, Marek, is the size and the weight of the parcel that you're going to be collecting. If it's something that's is big, you don't want to pick it up somewhere where then you have to walk for 150 metres to get to your car. You want to be able to get it out of the locker into your car. If you're not able to get it delivered home, obviously, for some people, heavier parcels, you just want it delivered home. But if home delivery is not available, or if it's, there's all this matrix of choices, aren't there, Marek, that you need to be able to give the customer information at checkout so they can make an informed decision when it comes to out of home delivery, selecting a parcel locker versus residential delivery, and time slot. Anyway, I'm going off on.
But Ian, no, these are actually really, really good points, because if you think about it, take it a step further. Let's say that you get, and depending upon the network, sometimes you can even have a parcel of about 30 kilos. So let's assume, it's rarely the case. Usually it's because someone's broken the rules. But if you have a parcel like that, that's big and heavy.
One of my bugbears, Marek, so let's tread carefully here, because I might go off on a rant about parcels that are really freight and should be a two-person delivery instead of a one-person. Anyway, Marek, please continue.
Well, actually, 31.5 is the point at which it becomes two-man. So it's just below. But imagine you get that in a shopping centre somewhere, and you don't have a trolley because you didn't go to the supermarket. What do you do with it? You have to go and find a trolley. You have to put your, whatever it is, €1 or $1 or whatever it will be, into the trolley, take it to the car, take the trolley back. Absolute nightmare. Honestly, I think that, yes, perhaps where you don't have enough locations, you need to use indoor sites, but it's certainly not the preferred.
Now, Marek, we're going to run out of time, though, if we don't.
We've got to talk about the other lockers.
We're going to talk about classic versus battery powered, or sort of the screen versus Bluetooth.
Yeah, indeed. And listen, I think it would be really cool. Maybe when we're at Post Expo, we have a bit of a chat, because I had a really cool discussion with our mates at Keba about, a lot of counterintuitive things. For example, and we'll share that in one other video, why the big locker cells are at the top, not the bottom. Because intuitively, you'd think the big one is for heavy parcels and it should be at the bottom. This was such a good one. I am going to share it with you. Why do you think you have the small ones at the bottom, not the top?
For laughs, to watch people topple over backwards. That's it's very simple.
You know what? It's actually quite clever. It's to avoid an animal, if the locker's left open by mistake, or a child getting into the locker and being closed in. So it's actually quite clever. Method in their madness. How about that?
We've got to talk about the difference, though, between the screens and the Bluetooth. So basically, you're talking about one that's going to be battery powered. The phone is the interface, versus one that's got a locker that's got its own power source, and there is a screen that's the interface, right?
Well, I actually call them parasitic lockers, because you're absolutely right. The next gen locker doesn't have its own, well, it does have battery power supply, but it doesn't have Wi-Fi. It's got a lot simpler, should we say, components, and it effectively parasitically uses your phone to do what it needs to do. From a customer perspective, it means that you need a smartphone to be able to use it with an app. So no app, no locker,
no parcel.
Yeah. Absolutely. On the other hand, it means you're likely to have more of these machines at approximate distance, which is great, because they don't require power. They're a lot easier to install. Planning permission is simpler because it's movable. So I think, that's effectively the debate.
We were talking about this, how you need to have the app to be able to access it. Are we excluding any customers by having it app dependent? I almost feel like someone who's going to use a parcel locker probably have a mobile phone.
You're absolutely right, because the sort of person that's going to be buying online, the chances are, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, they are going to have a smartphone. Yes, of course, you might eliminate a relatively small group of customers who don't. If you have a choice of having a locker nearby because there isn't the infrastructure otherwise, or having a locker further away, which doesn't require an app, it's pretty obvious where it's going to go. I think the bigger issue, Ian, is how do you find a scenario in which somebody wants your app? And it's okay if you're Amazon or if you're Alibaba, but if you're a much smaller, maybe locker-only company, it's much more difficult to convince someone to have your app.
Well, that's probably another discussion for another day, talking about interactive delivery management and how that all interfaces with customer choice, in-flight changes, which I really think should be called in-transit change. That's just a personal opinion. And then accessing the locker at the end of it, not to mention all of the notifications that you receive along the way. Interesting little tangent, Marek. Somebody once entered my phone number for their parcel. So they're tracking. I was getting messages from Australia Post saying, your parcel is now ready for collection from Cobram Post Office. Here's your reference. And I thought, well, that's not my parcel.
But if you think about it, it's so easy to do, isn't it? Because you just need the phone number or a mistake. Theoretically, there could be a couple of Ian Kerrs at whatever your local provider is.
So it was an interesting one. That was an SMS message sent from Australia Post, as opposed to sort of interacting via the Australia Post app. Again, a discussion for another day. But Marek, we're talking about these two kinds of locks. The Bluetooth screenless compared to the power supply and screen versions that are out there. You were talking in the last episode about getting planning permission because they can be smaller. Is there also that modular aspect of it that you can add, if a parcel locker bank is popular, you can add to it? Is that possible also with the sort of the traditional lockers as well?
Well, again, actually, I had a recent visit with one of the, let's say, best known and longest serving suppliers. And I asked actually that very question, Ian. So we think alike. With the classical module, you can actually have, the control tower or whatever we want to call it, the central part with the screen. And then several, I think it was in the case of that particular supplier, up to 400 cells from one control unit. With the next gen lockers, they come, I can't remember if it's 20 or say plus minus 20 cells.
Yeah.
You have to replicate the whole machine next to it. So although let's say the central electronics are a lot simpler because of what we discussed, actually you do need the whole.
It's a whole unit. It's not there's one unit. You're just adding doors. You're adding tech as well. It's not. I say just doors. It's not just doors. But you anyway.
But you know what, Ian? I think I know why. We can check, and maybe somebody from Switchbox, Keba, or whoever else is doing the next gen machines can tell us. But I think it's probably because the battery is central to the whole unit. And these things, it's incredible. Switchbox and Keba have told me that we're talking about 9 or 10 years battery life, and they say they've tested it. I still remember a long time ago, I said hair will grow here if it's 10 years. But, maybe hair will start growing. So, we'll see.
You never know. Don't throw away your brush just yet. When we're talking about these lockers, you mentioned that there's a couple of manufacturers. Obviously, there's our friends at Modern Expo as well as sponsoring this video, who produce lockers. And of course, if you're going to Parcel and Post Expo in Frankfurt this year, make sure you come and see us. We're going to be at the Modern Expo stand at some point. Details to be released later on, I think, Marek, is how we put it.
And there are going to be some really interesting things happening there. So whatever you do, make sure you look us up at the Modern Expo stand.
And where was I going with all this, Mark? Talking about these, one of the things that Modern Expo talks about is this idea of lockers as street furniture. And I think this is an interesting concept of saying, well, hang on, we've gone from having these very functional things that you plonk down in the street and they're, like a DHL pack station going back 20 years. It was just a metal box plonked down in the street, saying, well, how can this also be part of the urban environment? And I think that I think this is possible with both the screenless and the screen full. The lockers with screens. We can achieve this goal of integrating lockers into the urban environment.
I think it's a really good point, and there's a role for urban planners generally to start thinking about this. If you look, maybe we can even get a picture of an Allegro locker, which I believe is a Modern Expo machine. And what you'll do is you'll see that they're green, they're Levy, and very different to the Lithuanian Post machines, which have, artistic designs to make the machine look attractive. This is all about blending in, looking green, which lockers are, and fitting in with the urban landscape. There are going to be developments. One thing we should do, because if we don't do this, we'll be remiss, is to talk about, who the players are. It's been changing an awful lot. So I call them maybe let's be nice, let's say the father, not the grandfather of lockers, is Keba, because they're the guys who started out there at the very beginning with Deutsche Post. Austrian company, very stable, very experienced, one of the bigger players in the sector. Interestingly, you don't talk about the locker providers, you talk about the networks. So I think it's interesting to do this. Then you've got, at the other end of the scale, you've got one of the challengers, which is Swipbox. Very good on technology. I think they were the first probably that came up with the next gen machine. Quite expensive in terms of production because they do most of their stuff in Denmark, which is not the cheapest place. I know that because I went to look at universities for my daughter, and it was probably the most expensive weekend I've had in a long time. Then you've got our friends at Modern Expo who, because of the fact that they're in a relatively low-cost market, and chapeau bas that despite the Russian aggression on Ukraine, they're still able to produce effectively. No one sees that there are any issues there. So chapeau bas to them, and they're a very good low-cost option close to Europe. If you don't want to go all the way to China, where probably if you're going to produce thousands of the things, you'll get maybe a better price, but then you have to add the transport cost, which is not insignificant. So you got Modern Expo. Then we got do you remember the Cleveron towers?
Yep, of course.
So you got Cleveron, which I think has been less visible now, maybe partly because the machine they're known for best costs a fistful of dollars, because unless it's changed, it used to be about 100,000.
Well, they've got two parcel robots. They've got the Parcel Tower, which is a striking piece of technology, isn't it? And then there are they're parcel robots, which you look like a locker, but they've got no doors. So
they've got lots. They've been developing a lot of stuff. My concern, honestly, with them is that it's very much sort of not in a mad sense, but scientists going around creating a lot of new things, and some of it's really, really innovative. But I wonder whether sometimes it's not better to go back, perfect what's classical, and maybe these simple next-gen machines. But the reality is those machines are good if it comes to really massive throughput of parcels. You've got several players who actually have Chinese machines but rebrand them. That's also quite interesting. I won't mention names because they're not really producers in their own right. The biggest producers, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Zhailai or something in China. I pronounced it badly. I know I did. Sorry. Maybe someone who speaks good Chinese could put that right. Where, mass production, low cost, and the likes of Amazon will use those sort of machines. Our friends at Omnivert also. We missed a really big one, InPost. They've got more machines than anyone I would imagine at the moment in Europe. The only thing is I think they don't produce now so much for third parties. It's more for own use. And then the last but not least, I'd say of the big players, SMBC. Although, if someone's interested, we've got a few really good suppliers from small places that not many people know about. So if you're interested, you can knock on our door at LMP or LME being last mile experts, and we can share a bit of interesting information. So that's your...
I'll pop Marek's phone number down below.
Magnum opus on locker producers.
Right. Now, we've run out of time. It's a great topic. If you've got... Share your comments below. Let us know what you think about the two flavors of parcel lockers that we've been discussing. Make sure you check out the previous video we published as well. Thank you for watching this video on YouTube. Remember to hit like, subscribe, and the notification button. And at the end of this video, you'll see our beautiful faces and a couple of suggestions for videos to watch, like up there somewhere, or there, I don't know. Watch them. It's great. Think of all the time you waste on YouTube watching rubbish when you could watch something that's educational, informative. There you go. What a sell that was for YouTube, everybody. Please do subscribe. It helps us keep this channel free. Marek Krzyzewski, thanks for being part of the Last Mile Profits today.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. I'll just add one thing, because my friend Gary at Quadient will never forgive me. Of course, there is also Quadient,
Parcel
a
pending,
very
of course.
important supplier of innovative locker solutions.
We're going to get some emails after this one, aren't we? Thanks, everyone.
If we missed someone,
we've missed you.
Give us a call, and we'll probably have to do part 3.
Part 3. All right.